In this episode of Atomic Talks, episode 13, I sat down with Gabe Tharnish. Gabe is a really cool guy. He fell in love with the sport of wrestling when he was in high school. And now he serves the community by sharing his love for fighting sports by coaching wrestling and jiu-jitsu. Gabe is a naturally gifted coach. I definitely recommend checking out his jiu-jitsu classes. He's a client of mine, so it's kind of like he coaches me for jiu-jitsu and I coach him on strength training. If you guys enjoy this conversation between Gabe and I, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. All right. So, like normally, I do a little bit of preparation, but I haven't really done any preparation for this one, so I'm going to need your help to do the preparation real quick.
Just so we could talk about how I trained in martial arts and all that stuff.
Well, first things first, like what's your name?
Name's Gabe.
Gabe? Okay.
Yeah.
Gabe. All right. And like why are you on the podcast again?
It's like, you invited me on here. You're like, hey, you choked me out. Can you talk to my podcast? Yeah, sure.
So why is it? Well, first off, everybody, thank you for coming to another episode of Atomic Talks. I'm here with the legendary Gabe Tharnish. He's my jiu-jitsu coach, so I was able to get him in on this podcast episode. And he's also been my client recently for training. The guy's super strong. What made you get into fighting?
So it all started back in like middle school. Like I focused all my sports on my dad. So my dad was actually a state champion in Belen for track. So I ran track and all that, and he was like super good in basketball. So I grew up in like a basketball track family, but I could not shoot a basketball for the life of me. I was really, really bad hand-eye coordination. Didn't make the middle school team twice. So 7th year, I didn't make it. 8th grade, I didn't make it. So I was like, all right, basketball is not my sport. Luckily, I was super good in track, so I just did track because of my father. So I did track, I did basketball and all that. So freshman year, my PE coach was a head wrestling coach over there at Belen High School. So I was like, well, might as well try it. I need something, keep me in shape for track and all that stuff. So as soon as I joined wrestling, I just fell in love with the sport. So and that's what I do now. I'm the head coach at the Belen Middle School, and I'm assistant coach at the high school. And it's just a love I felt for the sport. Nothing really made me choose wrestling. A lot of kids come from like WWE and want to try to do that, or they watch the Olympics and want to do that. It was more of I just need something to do. So I joined wrestling, wrestled all 4 years in high school. I became a 2-time state placer. And then now I'm sharing knowledge off to the kids, give them something to do in case they're like me, not good at anything else, but, being physical.
Okay. Did you get fights a lot?
No, I didn't. So I never.
A dumb question.
Yeah, no, I know. I was always a skinny kid. I was always a skinny, tall, skinny kid. So like I never got into fights. I got picked on a lot in elementary and all that just because I was skinny and standoffish. I didn't really try to get in fights. I kept to myself. So it was a total shock to my parents because I just came home one day. I want to wrestle, and they're like, "Gabe, you've never done anything physical in your life like that." So it's just they were super supportive. Without my parents, I wouldn't be where I am right now. They were always there for me no matter what I did. I tried out tennis. They were super supportive. I tried out basketball, of course, super supportive. The only sport they didn't let me do was football just because they just didn't want me to play football. So they let me wrestle, and then my mom fell in love with the sport. My dad fell in love with the sport. So now we became this big wrestling family just because I wrestled. So to answer your question, yeah, I never fought. I've never even been in a single fight in my life just because people knew I knew how to wrestle once we got to high school. So once we got to high school, it was more of I don't want to mess with them. You know what I mean? Not that I'm a dangerous person myself. Like, I still don't know how to throw a punch. It's just more, he knows how to do stuff, and because of the sport, I got bigger and stronger and faster. So it was just more, let's not mess with this guy now.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you might not know how to throw a punch, but I would not mess with you.
I appreciate that.
We rolled a few times, and this guy kicks my butt.
Hey, don't lie. He still tosses me around like nothing. I could try to do something, and he just bench presses me off, and I'm like, all right, gotta try something new.
No, I got a lot of weight on you, and you still kick my butt. It's crazy. So, was your dad like you said he did basketball and track, and then you just weren't really into the basketball thing?
Yeah.
And was it like, was your parents, did they just want you playing a sport? Like, no matter what sport it was, or did they not really?
They didn't have no expectations for me. They just wanted me to be a kid, be happy, you know?
Okay.
So if it was just me playing soccer, because I grew up playing soccer. So that was my first ever sport, was playing soccer. So I grew up playing soccer up until middle school, and I fell out of love with it. So they're like, all right, you don't have to play soccer no more. I did track because my father did track, because saw the medals, I saw the records. He was a state champion in track. I wanted to be just like him. So that's why I joined track. So I went through track, middle school, was fast for middle school level. And then, you know, my dad, of course, always there watching me because he loves the sport. He was a very fast runner. He was running 45 400s back in high school. He was a really, really good track runner. It's just he was not fortunate enough to, you know, go to the next level. He didn't have the grades, or his mom worked really, really hard raising 5 kids by herself. So money was super tight. He just didn't have the opportunity to go to the collegiate level. So I wanted to, you know, make my dad proud. That's what I want to do. I just want to make my parents proud and do that sport. So I ran track. He loved it. And then freshman year, like I said, I joined wrestling. He loved it. And they were super, super supportive. There's not a time where they didn't go to a single tournament of mine, even if it was all the way north in Farmington or all the way south in Roswell. They even took us out of state to Las Vegas, Nevada, Denver, just to support me and my friends, you know, because we all became a family. So that whole team I grew up with, we all became a family. So we always traveled together. We went out of state for tournaments. Even if we went 0-2 and wasted all that time and money, they were still super supportive of us and our dreams. So I have immense respect for them. And, you know, without my parents, I wouldn't be where I am right now or have the mentality to even teach or even compete now.
Dang, yeah, they sound like good parents, honestly. Do you have a good relationship with them?
Oh, yeah, of course. Love my parents to death. Without my mom, my dad, I would not be here right now, where I am today. You know, I wouldn't be as motivated. I wouldn't be as intellectually smart. I wouldn't be where I am, because by nature, I'm very lazy. By nature, I am. And that's just the reality of it. So with... I can't tell, you know, twice the size as me, but no. So my mom was always on my ass for, you know, homework, everything, made me get straight A's all throughout high school. You know, my dad always on my ass for sports, not in like a bad way where, you know how some of those parents are like, you have to be great, you have to be this, you have to be that. And my dad's like, if you're going to do it, give it your 100%, you know, win or lose, I'm still in your corner. You know, they never yelled at me for losing a match. They never yelled at me for losing a race. You know, it was always pick your head up. Let's get to the next race. Let's get to the next match. You know, they never, ever did that to me. And that's one thing that I do philosophically for my coaching. I would never yell at a kid for losing. There's no reason to. They just lost. Their emotions are already so high. They wanted to impress their parents. They wanted to do everything right, impress their friends, and win just for themselves. You know, so yelling does not do anything for, you know, me, a child, a parent, nothing. It just makes them hate the sport. And it's such a shame, because I'm sure you've seen it. You see some of these people come in and say they have a terrible coach, and they're just trying to yell, or just, you know, intimidate them into being better. That's just not the way to be. Some kids learn like that, you know, but it's 90% of it, no kid's going to learn like that. No person, even adults. Even coming in here in the gym, I'm sure you've had those clients that are just real standoffish or like not sure of themselves, and they may have had a trainer before and they just pushed them so hard that they wanted to quit, you know? So it's just a different thing you got to think about when you're going into these type of sports. And without my parents and their motivation and them being there for me, I would have quit wrestling so long ago and just would have quit all sports. So my parents are definitely my number one supporters and everything.
Nice. Okay, yeah, that's a pretty cool philosophy that you ended up getting from them there. The philosophy of not being like too hard on people kind of came from your parents.
Yeah. Of course you got to be hard on people. That just, of course, you got to get in the face, yell at them. You know, you need to motivate them how motivated you are, you know, but there's a way to do it. You know, if you're just bashing a kid or bashing a client, that's not going to do anything for them. You know, there's a difference between discipline and just being a total, you know what, you know, there's a fine line to it, but there's also a huge spectrum to it, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? So it's just, you got to find that spectrum right. Cause you may have one client that may be, you know, super motivated or whatever, and they need that yelling. And they need that motivation from you. And you may have one that may can't get yelled at, and you just got to figure out a way how to motivate them yourself, you know? So it just depends on who you are and what your client is. Because I come from middle school wrestling, so a lot of these kids are going through puberty, you know, they're struggling with self-doubts and all that, you know, very insecure about themselves, you know, and some of these kids have been wrestling since they're 4 years old, and I'm getting fresh, brand new people. So you just got to find that fine line, you know? So with my experienced ones, of course, I'm a lot harder with them, you know, because I've trained them either from junior wrestling or I've known them because we're all in the same program. So of course I'm going to be harder on them, but I'm not going to be one of those people who make them lose the love for the sport. You know, I'm not going to berate them for losing. That's my philosophy. I will never, ever berate you for losing. There's no place in that. There's nothing, right? Me yelling at you after you lose is just going to make you hate me and make you hate the sport. So you would never see me doing that. I will talk to my athletes, though, after every time they lose. Just because sometimes you need to hear it, and sometimes I let some athletes go away because they just need to cool down, collect their thoughts, and then come back to me. Then I tell them what you did wrong, how we can improve it, and what's our next step forward. So there's a fine line and, of course, a spectrum of everything we do, or I do, for my coaching and what I teach you guys. As you see, when I teach you guys jiu-jitsu, I teach you guys 4 different ways just to hit one thing, because it doesn't work, you know? You guys don't see me yelling at you guys, or what's it called? I'll make a lighthearted joke of how you're messing up, then we'll go on to it. If I know you can't take jokes or don't understand them, I'll just show you the move, you know? So it just depends on how the person learns and how the person, you know, reacts to my coaching style. Because some people will just not get my coaching style, and that's okay. Not every kid can be coached the same way I could coach them, you know? So that's why there's multiple different ways to learn something.
And like, how do you think of like fighting sports in general play into like life outside of the gym sort of thing? Like, do you think there's like a carryover personality wise, work ethic wise, things like that?
You'll notice it could go one of two ways. One, it's always going to be this for everybody. It's discipline, right? You got to be super disciplined for either MMA, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and all that. Because one, if you're not training, someone's always going to be better than you. There's always someone better. And that's the philosophy I always carry. There's always someone better. So you're always working to be that better person, you know? Because there's someone that wants to be in your position with your skill level, in your competition-wise, or even training-wise, right? There's always somebody that wants to be like you. So you always got to be better than the next person above you, right? And even if they're the best in the world, they're only the best for a year. They're only the best for the month, right? They may even only be the best for the day, right? There's always someone better than you. So you just got to take that mentality of just waking up every day and be better than the person you were yesterday, right? And that's, I believe, every person who trains like a martial art carries that mentality over. There's also the cons, you know, some people may get super cocky. You know, they think they're the best in the sport. They think, you know, their discipline's the best, and, you know, it carries over. I'm sure you encounter some of those people, even weight training or doing all that stuff. So it could go either way, you know. I like to believe that I carry just the motivational part, but, you know, I could be cocky, you know. It's just something I don't notice, and some people may try to be, like, genuinely nice or something, but they carry over that cockiness from their sport or, you know, what they do. So it's a fine line, but mainly I believe that if you wrestled, if you've done any type of MMA, even football, any sport, right, it just gives you the motivation and courage to keep going on in life, you know, because those are hard sports. Those really are, you know, really hard mentally, physically, and emotionally, you know, like people don't realize how emotionally charged all this stuff is. And even powerlifting and weight training, I believe it's still super emotionally charged and physically charged. Yeah, sure. You could bench more than me, you could deadlift more than me, you could squat more than me, you know, but I'm trying to be better than I was yesterday, you know. One day I may be like you, one day I may not be, but my goal for today is be better than the person I was yesterday. And that's the mentality I like to carry over every single day.
That's definitely a healthy way of thinking about it. It's like one of those things that sometimes easier said than done, especially
of course,
especially with social media and stuff like that. Like, and actually, I'm kind of curious about that, like, because in powerlifting specifically, social media can sometimes, like, if I watch too many powerlifters on social media, then I'm never ever gonna feel strong. And like, I'm not saying I should feel strong either. I'm like, I don't know exactly if I should or not, really.
Yeah.
But the point is, though, is that, like, like let's say I hit a 600-pound deadlift, like it's never going to be like the 800-pound deadlift that I see my coach on social media hit. Or if beyond my coach, he's like one of the best in Canada, but there's even better lifters in America, you know? Yeah. Like when you look at them on their social media,
exactly.
Does that happen in fighting sports?
All the time. I say all the time because you get those high school phenoms that are over here making the Olympic team, making the world's team, and some kids look at that and they're like, why can't I be that good? And sometimes that's just how the cards are played. Sometimes you try your hardest, but you can never be as good. And that's just a harsh reality of all sports, martial arts, football, powerlifting, and all that, right? But it's hard to not compare yourself to them. It really, really is. I looked up to this guy named Dylan Gonzalez. He was a state champ from Belen. He was a junior when I first came in, and he took me under his wing. And, I'm forever grateful for him teaching me and coaching me throughout, and I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be state champ, get my hand raised, go to the crowd, hug my mom, and just make my parents proud. But unfortunately, I never captured that state title that I dreamed of, So it is a harsh reality. It really is. And, it brings you down. It really does. But that's why I coach, I'm trying to help these kids achieve the dream I couldn't achieve. You know what I mean? So it's hard to deal with it mentally. It really is. There's no easy way to deal with it, right? If you're super mentally strong, okay, cool. You could get over fast. But like me, I was sulking it for like up to 2 years after, into my 20s. I'm only 21, but like even when I was mid-20s, I was still sulking there like, man, if I would have done this, if I would have done that, it's still hard mentally to overcome that. But you got to look at it like my philosophy, like I was saying. That was the different Gabe. That was a different Adam. I couldn't deadlift 550 yesterday, but here I am today, deadlifting 600. I am better than the person I was yesterday, and that's all I need to compare myself to. Because it's so easy to compare ourselves to other people.
Oh, totally.
It's so easy, right? Like I want to be Olympic champion like Jordan Burroughs, right? I'm sure you want to be the best powerlifter in the world, right? But sometimes that's just not how we're gifted. Sometimes we're placed on this planet to do something different, So that's why I may not be the best coach. I may not be the best wrestler, but I could be the best person I am today for these kids and for my clients, I'm not the best jiu-jitsu practitioner, right? There's still people that could go out there and beat me up like no tomorrow, and there's nothing I could do. But if I could train you guys to be the best persons you could be in the sport, then so be it. Because my objective as a coach is so you guys could ragdoll me. I'm not going to get butthurt. I'm not going to get try to hurt you just because you're better than me now. No, that is my goal as a coach. I want you better than me.
That was a cool thing in the class yesterday where it was like, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it alluded to the idea that like you want me to be able to beat you kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because then it would be like a testament to like you actually teaching me something kind of thing. Which is kind of a cool concept, really. Like, and I feel like that makes me wonder, do you think that like being a fighting sports competitor alone is like different than being a coach? I mean, the reason I ask that is because I've heard things like fighting sports are out of all sports, like if you're in a fighting sport, you should have like a certain level of like cockiness or a certain level of competitiveness that's like beyond what would be in some other sports. And I don't know if that's like, if there's a comparison there or not. But I've heard things like any fighter should think that they can beat up or want to be or imagine themselves beating up the other person.
No, you should walk on either that mat, that octagon, that ring like you're the best in the world, and I'm going to beat you up.
But when you're coaching, is it a different vibe?
So the coaching is, I can't speak for all coaches, right? Because every coach is different. Every single coach in this world is going to be different, right? We're not all going to share the same mentality. My mentality is I want to train you so good that you could beat me up and everybody else in this world. That is my mentality, right? The day you can start beating me up, no problem, is the day I succeeded as a coach, right? And some coaches don't have that mentality. They really don't. Some coaches train you until they're good enough where they can still beat you up. Like say I'm training you, right? I'll train you only enough and hide knowledge from you so I can still, have a one up on you. That's not who I am. I share all my knowledge, and you see that. I show you every single tip and trick. I try to help you. If that doesn't work, I try to show you another one, So it's like some coaches will hide those from you just so they could be better and make themselves look better. right? So it just depends on the coach and what style. Luckily, here in New Mexico, we have a huge MMA community, right? We have John Jones coming from Jackson's, we have Holly Holmes, all that stuff. So we have a huge knowledge of fighting sports in New Mexico. And I like to believe that here we like to share knowledge, right? We like to share knowledge and just, train somebody to be the next best person, right? You see John Jones now training Olympic champion Gabe Stevenson like he's one of his underlings, and he's sharing all his knowledge. So I like to believe that, every coach wants to make their kids better than us, but that's just not the reality of some sports. Some MMA coaches are going to just try to be the best still, and that's where the mentality comes in. They're still trying to live their glory days from back when they were fighting or they were competing and still try to one up, young kids like me and you, So that's why when I go to my coaching mentality, it's more, I want you to beat me up. I need you to beat me up, actually. I need you to be so good that you can out-coach me and out-train me. You know what I mean? So in a competition setting, if I see one of my students, they better be able to beat me. That's how good I want my students to be and my kids whenever I coach wrestling or I coach jiu-jitsu. So that's my mentality.
So you're a wrestler to begin with.
Yes, sir.
The jiu-jitsu, how long have you been doing that for?
I've been doing jiu-jitsu about a year and 6 months now.
Okay. So you're pretty good at coaching jiu-jitsu. Like, I gotta say, you said you're a white belt, right?
Yeah. Technically, I'm still a white belt, but just because I miss promotions, all that, it just depends. Because there's so much levels to this sport that white belt shouldn't even be coaching. But since I have so many years of wrestling and grappling experience, the gym feels comfortable enough to let me coach with a white belt, right? And sometimes a belt is just a color. It really is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you got blue belt phenoms that are submitting black belts and all that, So it's just a color. And I mainly do no-gi, and there's no belts in that. So it's not like, oh, well, white belt's teaching a gi class, No, I have a wrestler. I have a wrestler's background, and I'm teaching you guys these moves, So it's not like I'm a fresh newbie, only been training for a year, and I'm just trying to teach you guys. No, I have grappling experience.
And then I'm sure wrestling, it probably plays in a little bit more on no-gi than it does.
Yes, definitely. Yes. It definitely plays a lot bigger role because in gi, of course, you have your, gi on, you have a lot more different chokes, a lot more different control. No gi, it's more tailored to wrestling, or wrestlers, should I say. You'll see a lot of high-level wrestlers that can't make the world team or make, the Olympic team in wrestling just go into jiu-jitsu, and they are really, really good competitors because they know how to wrestle. They may be white belts, but they're over there still submitting black belts and all that just because they have D1 college experience, they have national titles under their belt, and they're over there, beating up higher belts just because they only train jiu-jitsu. There's so much different martial arts that can transfer to each other. Like, you see most MMA fighters are wrestlers. 9 out of 10 MMA fighters are really wrestlers just switching in. You see all the...
I didn't even know that. Okay.
So you'll see, like, current champions now. Kazma, he was a wrestler for Sweden. Now he's a champion. So there's all the Dagestanis you see. The recent light heavyweight champion was a wrestler. So you see them transition into MMA, and they do really, really good because they're really good at grappling, and they're really, really good at submissions. So it's just what they choose to do, of course.
Yeah, and so since you're kind of new to the jiu-jitsu situation, what is your approach? Like, do you watch a lot of YouTube videos about it or something, or is it kind of learning from the coaches?
The best way to ever learn any martial art, any sport, you could watch YouTube all day long. You can. You can only learn so much until you do it. So the best way to ever train any martial art, any sport, even powerlifting, right? You can watch technique all day. It's just to get in the gym and just do it and train it. And you're going to suck. You really are. You're going to suck, and that's okay. It's okay to suck because I still suck. You know what I mean? So it's more, you just got to get in there and do it and don't get discouraged, right? You're going to get beat up. You're going to hurt. You're going to do all this stuff. But the thing to do is get up and be better than you were yesterday, right? So it's like, I just competed recently and I only won one match, and that's okay. I didn't get upset. It's a learning moment. That's all it is. All this is just a learning moment.
You're not in the bathroom. Stupid.
Back in high school, I just throw my head in, like, oh, I'm so bad. And, like, all the parents are looking there, like, oh, that kid's mad.
Would you actually get mad like that?
Oh, yeah, no. I used to take off my headgear. I would wait to not embarrass myself. I would walk to the bathroom, throw my headgear against the wall, and be like, "I suck."
Okay, I feel you. Yeah,
I know. I was like, "I suck." Sometimes my coach would be in there and be like, "Stop embarrassing us." I tell that to my kids sometimes too. I'd be like, "Are you done embarrassing yourself?" They're like, "Yeah." So it just depends.
Like I remember, I hate to keep comparing it to other sports.
No. Compare them all you want.
So like in soccer and basketball. Mm-hmm. Like, I almost feel like it was even more when I was really young, but, like, sometimes parents, like, my parents weren't necessarily like this so much, but, like, there was some kids that had parents that would be, like, you know, yelling at the refs and just be, like, very flamboyant, I guess.
Yeah.
Was it like that in wrestling?
Oh, dude. Junior wrestling it's a whole different level. I won't even touch junior wrestling just because of the parents.
Really?
Yeah, it gets so intense because you got 4-year-olds that barely know how to run. Like, of course they know how to walk and all that stuff, but, you know, they're so uncoordinated and they lose. And their parents are literally yelling at a 4-year-old for losing. And you're like, they're 4. Go feed them some Dino Nuggies. Like, take them to McDonald's after, dude. Like, I don't know what you're doing. But
okay,
no, you
so
get
yelling at the kids.
Yeah, they yell at me. They yell at the coaches. They're like, why aren't you teaching them better? And it's like, they're 4. You know? So it's just like... And I'm sure it's like basketball and all that. I didn't do basketball as a little kid, but even soccer when I was a little kid, you have parents yelling at their kid for missing a kick or something, and you're like, "Come on, ref!" Yeah, they're 4. Yeah, you know, they're 6. Like, let them be kids, you know.
Yeah.
Like at that stage, it's just for them to, you know, get all that excess energy out and do something they like, you know.
Right, yeah.
And even in middle school, that's how I treat it. I'm like, you're a middle schooler. We're not competing for a state championship. We're not doing that. Of course, I'm training you for the high school level. Because Belen is very, very good at wrestling. Like, that is our top sport, is wrestling.
Oh, cool.
We have about 11 state championships. We always have 2 to 3 state champions a year. So that is our main sport. So I'm training you for, you know, the intensity of the high school. But I'm also letting us have fun, you know? Because if we don't have fun, why are you going to stay? Why are you going to do something you don't like, you know? You're a middle schooler. You're 11, 12, 13, 14 at the oldest, you know, you're in those developmental stages. Like I said earlier, you know, you're going to puberty, you're self-conscious, you know, you're trying to find something you like, your rhythm. You know, why am I going to be that guy who's just going to yell at you for, you know, because you don't get it. You're new to the sport, you know.
Do you have to like dial it up or down based on the kid?
Yeah. So if you've been, you know, junior wrestling since 4 and you're going out of state, of course I'm going to be hard on you. Of course. If you're fresh to the sport, I'm not going to be as hard on you. Of course I'm going to be hard on you because I care. You know, I love the sport. I'm making sure that name doesn't die. I'm making sure Belen wrestling never goes away. You know what I mean? Our dominance, our, you know, program, our everything. So, you know, I still have a standard. You know, our standard is still train you the best you can be and, you know, make every other person be afraid of Belen wrestling. You know, I want the name, oh, I have a Belen wrestler. You know, they're going to be, shit, you know, I got to wrestle him. You know, so that's the mentality I go into. But you can't overtrain these kids, you know. You can't make them have an expectation so high that, you know, you're constantly yelling at them to be better, you know, because every kid's different. Every kid's ceiling is different. Every kid's floor is different. So some kids may just be naturally gifted. You know, I was one of those kids who only had 4 years of wrestling and still was top in the state every year. All right. My ceiling was a lot higher. And some kids may be wrestling since they're 4, but they just can't place at state or even make the varsity team. So, you know, there's ceilings and there's floors to the sport. And that goes for every sport, you know.
Right. Is there a big variety of like how good the kid wants to be sort of thing? Like there's some kids that kind of do it casually.
There's some kids that just do it because their parents make them. You know, okay. I have some kids like that, and that's okay. You know, I don't hold them to a higher expectation. You know what I mean? But if a kid comes to me and is like, can I train for 30 minutes longer? Can you show me what that move was? You know, can you do this? Can you do that? Then I'll be like, all right, I know this kid wants it. I know this kid wants to be the best. I'm going to take my time and be with them. But, you know, if they're just showing up to practice just to show up because their parents dropped them off, then all right. You know, like, I'm still going to train you the best that you want to be. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it also depends on the kid, too. I want you to be the best ever. But it's your mentality how good you want to be. You know what I mean? So it's like, you got to figure out each kid themselves. Because some kids want to be the best ever. And that's okay. I'll train you to be the best ever. I'll put you through the conditioning to be the best ever. But if this kid's just showing up, it's like, well, I don't even want to be here. All right, I'll train you to be, I'm still going to teach you wrestling. I'm still going to make sure your moves are perfect. But you got to have that mindset. All right? I'm not going to focus on you that much compared to the other kids who really, really want it. Of course, I'm still including you in everything. Of course, I'm still training you in everything. I'm still giving you that time and attention if you have questions or needs. But I can only help you as much as you help me. Help me help you, right? So if they don't help me, I can't really help you.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So we're trying to look. I mentioned earlier the cockiness thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you think that's a thing in the fighting sports?
Oh, of course. You see Conor McGregor, you see everyone. I'm the best in the world. No one can beat me. Blah blah blah. And that happens. Like they walk out with their chest up. They think they're untouchable, and that happens to even us. Like I was like that for a little bit too. It just right. happens. Sometimes it happens without you even knowing, and that happened to me. I would just walk and sometimes you just need someone to bring you down, and you're like, all right, I'm not that good. Or shouldn't be acting this way just because I do this or that, and it happens, And I
feel like it can happen to athletes across all different sports.
Of course.
And I feel like there's positive and negatives to it, like across all different sports. But I don't know what got this in my head or who told me this at what point, but it almost seems like in fighting sports, like there's a little bit more positive to the cockiness and a little bit less negative to the cockiness than in other sports sometimes. Would you say that's a thing, or is it kind of just really depend on the personality type?
It depends. It depends because some kids, I know I'm focusing a lot of kids just because that's all I coach. But some kids, they need that cockiness. You know what I mean? They need to believe that they need to be confident in themselves, and they need to be confident. And that sometimes it chances over good, or sometimes it chances over really, really bad. You know what I mean? So it just depends on the kid itself. Like you see a lot of UFC fighters be super cocky, and sometimes it's just showboating. It's building up hype for the fight, Sometimes they just want to be a villain, and that's okay. But they're getting paid to do this,
and that's probably part of why the cockiness thing comes to my mind. Is because of
because you see like Chael Sonnen. I don't think he's that bad of a man, but he loves to play the villain in every single fight, and it makes the fight super, super entertaining.
He's like my favorite trash.
Yes. I was literally watching highlights at lunch today. So it's a lot of showboating and all that, but like you'll notice some kids are just so cocky and so obnoxious, and you're like, dude, just shut up. Nobody cares.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's a difference between confident in what you do and just so cocky that you're like, I don't care, dude. I really don't.
Because then there could be like a cockiness level where they're like, I don't have to show up to practice or something like that.
Yeah, no, and I've had teammates like that too, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to show up today. I'm like, why, dude? You need to train. And they're like, oh, when you get as good as me, you don't need to. I'm like, no, that's not how it works, dude. So like the more you miss practice, the more you do that, then, they get beat on the mat or they get beat in the ring, and they're like, why did I lose? It's like, well, you only showed up to practice once this week, You're naturally gifted, but that kid wants it more. And that goes back to the mentality thing. Being better than you were yesterday and being the best you can be today.
I don't know that much about how wrestling works in terms of like the actual
sport itself.
Yeah, the sport itself. Do you like let's say high school wrestling, for example, or even middle school wrestling? Do the kids know what other kid they're going to go against, or is it like
yeah? So it's like it's like. It could be two ways. It could be like dual tournaments, which like you go team versus team. You may not know the kid's name, but they're your weight class, and sometimes it's equal, skill level, or sometimes it's not. When I wrestled in high school, sometimes you get the first year varsity kid just because they didn't have a guy on the spot, and he's a first year wrestler. He already got bumped up to varsity because they don't want to lose points or whatever. So like there's a huge skill discrepancy, and then sometimes hey, they're a state champ. Because you'll see their name in brackets, and you can look up their name because we use something called track wrestling. So you can look up what tournaments they went to, what they placed, who they beat. So you can kind of tell how good they are, but styles differ. Just like in MMA and all that. You may have an orthodox boxer, knows a little bit of wrestling, or you may have a Muay Thai fighter who's really, really good at jiu-jitsu. So there's just so many different styles of wrestling and all that in the sport itself, and then it transfers over to, if they want to go MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, and all that. Of course, so it's a style difference, and it's a skill level difference, too, that plays into it.
Do you ever watch arm wrestling, by chance?
No,
Okay.
not really.
So that's like something that I used to think was just kind of a funny, joke sport kind of thing. Recently, though, I say recently, probably since pandemic, everybody was bored during the pandemic. I was actually around the time that Larry Wheels got in arm wrestling. I started to really like that sport. I was like, okay, this is actually a cool sport.
Yeah, no, it takes a lot of strength. It really does. People think it's a joke sport. It's like, no, dude, you can snap your forearm in that sport. Yeah, no, and it's crazy.
And then there's a lot of technique involved. Like they call it arm wrestling, and it really is kind of just like a wrestling, but just for the arm kind of thing.
Yeah.
In that sport, it's like the style thing comes into play big time. And that's like my favorite thing about watching arm wrestling is there'll be a guy that is just demolishing, and then he goes against this guy that he's 100% supposed to beat, kind of thing. Like everybody thinks that the other guy's the underdog. And then all of a sudden he'll just get wrecked, and it's there's just some type of thing that everybody was overlooking that the other guy had.
Yeah, it's a style difference. It really is. It just depends on the style. Like, I'm gonna go back to MMA. You may see a boxer versus a wrestler. The wrestler's gonna win. Just because the boxer doesn't know how to grapple that good, Of course, they have a basis on it. They train in the camp and all that. But if you go against a guy who's been wrestling since they're 4 years old versus a boxer who's been boxing all his life, the boxer's going to win on his feet every single time. Yeah. A wrestler's not going to try to challenge a boxer on their feet. They're going to take him down. And then the boxer doesn't know what to do. So the wrestler will win 9 times out of 10.
So that's an interesting concept, too, that I also wanted to ask you about. I've heard things like the last person that you ever want to get in a fight with out in a bar or in a street fight or whatever it is a wrestler. So, and you think that's a true statement?
It's true and it's not true at the same time, because wrestlers will always go for takedowns. We're not even going to throw a punch. We're going to try to double leg you and just take you down to the floor and just throw punches, because we don't know how to punch. We know how to take you down, but we don't know how to punch. So if anybody knows how to guillotine you or just choke you out, more than likely, you're going to get choked out. Because we always go, you notice how I take you down, I don't go head on the outside because you're going to rip my head off. You've done it. Because I forget, little tips here and there. I train you here and there. So it just depends. So if somebody knows jiu-jitsu and I try to take you down with my head on the outside, you're just going to rip a guillotine and choke me out. And I'm going nights out and I'm going to be on YouTube on a highlight reel. Right?
So is because each different fighting sport has a little different set of rules.
Yeah.
And MMA is kind of I think that's gotten so popular because it's a little bit closer to maybe what would be seen in a
street fight.
Right. So a wrestling, there's rules that set it up to where it's a little different than a street fight, I guess, right? There's no striking.
No striking, no nothing. Because the goal of wrestling is to take down your opponent and in America anyway, because we do something called folk style in America, and that's American style wrestling. So our goal, you'll also hear it be called mat wrestling, because as soon as you take you down, our objective is to pin you to the floor and hold you on your back. That's the goal of folk style wrestling. So you'll see us be very, very good at controlling the bottom, right? So if we get in a street fight and we get to the ground, we're very, very good at controlling you on the ground. Right? Once you go everywhere else in the world, there's only 2 styles of wrestling, and that's Greco and freestyle. Greco is all upper body wrestling. So you don't go attack the legs, and it's mainly throws. You're throwing the person. Whoa. So there'll be something for you to look up tonight and be coolest Greco throws or Greco matches, because it's all upper body, and you're just launching them, which is still very, very useful in an MMA, stance and all that, because it's still upper body wrestling. You're just learning how to throw. In freestyle, it's like folk style, but instead of, holding your opponent on the floor, you're just trying to expose their back. So if you get them with something called a gut wrench, which is just I'm holding their gut really close and I'm throwing them around me, I just got to expose their back to score points. In folk style, though, I have to expose their back for points, but also my main objective is to pin them, right? Because I could roll them, but they could score no points because there's no control. So folk style, I'm trying to control you on your back. In freestyle and all that, I'm just trying to roll you over, and that's an exposure point. So the styles differ from America to the rest of the world, but it just, like I said, everything just depends on what you know and what the other person knows, and that's what makes street fights super, super dangerous. Because I don't know what you know. You could be a legendary kickboxer, and I try to take you down, and I don't know that, and you're just kneeing me in the face. You know what I mean? Or you may try to fight me, and I'm a world-class wrestler.
Right.
And I'm just going to suplex you onto your neck.
I'm sure that gets even more complicated when you bring in like weapons into these.
Yeah, of course. You know, if it's weapons, then, you know, stay away. No matter what you know. No matter what you know. You stay away. If they pull out a knife, yeah, I'm going to double leg you, but you're going to stab me 4 times in the ribs before I even take you to the ground.
Do you ever watch the Rocky movies?
I had seen like 1 and 2, but that's about it.
Okay, I think it was Rocky number 4 or something like that, where there's like this like blonde Russian guy that was like I think he was like they made him seem like he was a machine.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about though. Yeah,
okay, yeah. So when I was young, I asked my dad one time. I was so young. I was watching. Like, Dad, like would that guy still die to a bullet though? Like, because I genuinely didn't know. Like, I was like, he looked so tough in the movie that I was like,
you're like, he's bulletproof. He's like bulletproof. He's like, he has muscle on muscles. It's just bounce off, right? You're like, no.
But then no, you'd still die.
Yeah, that's why, like, you see a weapon come out, you're like, no, I ain't fighting you. Like, even a baseball bat, something. If they pull out a gun, I'm definitely not fighting you. You know?
Right.
Yeah, so it just that's why it makes street fight so dangerous, because you don't know. Like, if I get in a street fight, I'm pulling out my pocket knife. You know, like, it's my life against yours.
Right.
I do not care. I will take your life if you're trying to kill me or whatever.
That's fair.
I don't have a guilty conscience on that. You know, like, your mother may cry. I'm not crying. I'm alive. You know, so
since you're well versed in the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu, what fighting style, like beyond, I guess, MMA, would be like in your mind, what would be like the scariest type of guy that you run? Like, if you were running into a street fight or like a bar fight, assuming there's no weapons, would you be like more afraid going against like the really good wrestler guy, or the really good jiu-jitsu guy, or the really good judo guy, or what would be or I guess Krav Maga's another one?
Yeah. More scared of a guy who knows all 3, you know what I mean? But it's like,
right.
So like a cross trainer, like, he's been wrestling all his life, and he changes. I'm not gonna fuck with them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I take him down, he's gonna do something, give me a triangle, give me the guillotine, you know, armbar me until the cops get there, and be embarrassed the whole time with a broken arm, you know. But it just.
So it's kind of impossible to say what.
It's so hard because you don't know the skill level either, you know. Because you could be like, oh, I do jiu-jitsu, but you trained 4 classes. You know what I mean? Totally, yeah. So you're like, well,
I gotta be like me.
I don't know. I'm so scared of you, but no, it just you don't know. That's the whole thing.
The worst I can do is squat you, brother.
Yeah, that's the worst I can do. Oh, you just bent. You left me over your head and just tossed me over the bar.
Yeah, right. Only if you're a barbell.
You treat me like a barbell. No, but it just what you know, and that's the whole thing about like street fights, and like, I don't know what you know, and that's why I don't get in them, because I don't know if you're a world-class MMA fighter and I just don't recognize you. I don't know if you're like some Russian who's been in a cave forever just training their heart out, or I don't know if you're just some guy who just smokes weed all day. It's just, I don't know. I do not know, and I'm not going to try to know. So that's why I de-escalate the situation. That is the first thing. De-escalate it. If you don't de-escalate it, then just defend yourself the best you know how.
Like, I would say that most sports can be beneficial for people's self-esteem.
Oh, yeah.
Like that. Do you think that fighting sports are maybe a special case where it could be even more beneficial for somebody's self-esteem or something like that?
It just depends on the kid itself. Okay. That just is all it is, because some people just may have the mentality that they're not good at anything, they won't be good at anything, and no matter what you do or how much you try, you can't beat that self-esteem. But generally speaking, I believe, it does improve their self-esteem, because it improved my confidence. Because I was a skinny kid who just ran fast. I didn't have anything special going on for me besides being fast and smart. So wrestling helped me get out of my shell. Explore more out there. It definitely helps. Just talking to people in general, because if I could get out on that mat and wrestle this guy and win or even lose, but I do it 100%, it just brings up the confidence, right? Because if you could go out there and expose yourself like that, it does wonders. Even football, like I go out there, run around, catch a football, that does so much for you. Your confidence goes up so much. You're like, I'm doing this in front of my family and friends. I'm doing this in front of the crowd of people I do not know, and they're cheering me on, So that confidence really, really does bring up people's low self-esteem, you know, and I say it's done it for me because, you know, like I said, I was a skinny kid, and then now, you know, I have muscles now thanks to you, but
no, you had muscle. You've had muscle the whole time.
So it helps. The bottom line, it helps. Depending on how much it helps, just depends on, you know, the kid itself or the person itself, you know, because I coach adults and, you know, they're getting, you know, they may be a little overweight, you know, and they're just trying to improve their cardio or something, and watching them come to class, get better, get skinnier, and seeing smile come back on their face and just getting super confident in themselves, you know, going out, you know, maybe some people want to lose some weight to get back in the dating scene, you know, and they lose that weight and they get back out there and they see their confidence skyrocket because they can finally talk to girls or boys, you know, it's so amazing to see. And that's so good to, you know, feel like I trained you to do that, you know, like I helped you regain that confidence, you know, it's something that, you know, you can't explain with words, you know, it's just that feeling of gratitude and just like overwhelming happiness for like the other person and all that.
Do you think that the ability to hypothetically protect yourself or even protect others that you love, do you think that plays into it at all?
Oh yeah, of course. Okay. Like knowing that I could like defend my family, my friends, you know, my girlfriend, my significant other, you know, that brings the confidence of no others, you know, it brings like safety into your own mind. Like, okay, if something happens, I know I could defend my wife. I know I could defend my mom, you know I could defend the ones I love truly to me, you know? So doing something like this, you know, it really does help. And, you know, my sport isn't for everyone. Of course, some people don't want to roll around with a bunch of other dudes, you know? Some people not like that, and that's okay. That's why there's so much out there, you know. That's why you can take like a boxing class, you can take a jiu-jitsu or a Muay Thai class, you know. You could go out there and just learn self-defense for yourself, go out there and play tennis or go out there and play golf, you know. It's just knowing that you could do something to impress your significant other, your family, your friends, and doing something you love and enjoy, that brings the confidence up so much that, you know, they can start to believe, yeah, I'm in shape now. I can defend my family and friends. I could do this. You know, I'm doing good. Even weightlifting, they can feel so strong that, you know, they feel like nothing could beat them up or nothing can, you know, hurt my family and friends because I'm doing all this and this and this to prevent that, you know. And that may not be the reason they're training for it, but that's the reason why they get motivated to keep on going.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting that you bring that up, just because, like, I feel like bodybuilders and powerlifters, like, they'll have big muscles and stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's an intimidation factor.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like
you see a big buff dude and you're like, I don't want to mess with him.
Right.
You know?
Right. But if a bodybuilder or a powerlifter actually, if they're not training any fighting sports, and the bodybuilder or powerlifter actually has it in their mind, like, oh, I can defend myself better than the next guy or something, I feel like it's almost a little bit of illusion. You know what I mean?
It is. It really is an illusion.
Like a false mental picture to think. Whereas like fighting sports, they actually get you better at fighting. Like they're literally fighting sports. Like, so I feel like if a guy like that gets big doing powerlifting or bodybuilding, like it might help them think that they'll be able to protect people and stuff like that, and just because they're able to intimidate better, maybe. But like me going from the 530 squat that I have now to like a 700-pound squat, I know that that's not going to actually help me defend. Whereas going from a white belt to a black belt, I would be infinitely better at defending.
Oh yeah, no, of course, no. It's just like I said, like, you know, it's an intimidation factor. You'll see a big dude, no matter what sport you train, dude, or anything you do. You're on the street and you see a big dude, you're like, oh shit, you know, and you immediately think that you're like, oh, whatever, you know, and you just like get intimidated because how tall or big and strong they are, you know, how big their muscles are. But the fact of reality is they're not going to last very long in a fight. Right. Just because their cardio is so bad.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it's a science behind it too, you know, like the bigger the muscle you have, the more blood needs to go to your muscle. So that's why you get so much tired so much faster. So it's just, you know, and you've experienced it, you know, you could do 10 minutes on the bike, 10 minutes on treadmill. You could run a mile pretty fast, you know, you could do Stairmaster forever long. But as soon as you start actually getting into like a physical fight, throwing punches or trying to take people down, it's a different level of cardio that these big bodybuilders or powerlifters just could not do because they're not trained for that. You know? Like I'm trained for that. I could roll around all day, you know. And, of course I'm going to get tired, it's rolling around. But I could get up and recover faster than you,
Definitely.
just somebody with bigger muscles and whatever. And you'll see, some wrestlers, some MMA fighters with the biggest muscles, but they've trained themselves, to get the blood to their oxygen so much faster so they have these big muscles, or they just condition so much where they can do that stuff. But somebody who's never conditioned, it's not that intimidating. Like, to me, a guy with super big muscles isn't intimidating to me anymore.
Right.
Just because what I know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if some Joe Smo on the street, sees a bodybuilder, they may, be intimidated. Me, I'm like, the bigger muscles you have, the more likelihood that you don't train in martial art or whatever. And that's not the case. It's not always the case. And I'm not saying that's the case. The case is, I'm just going to be less intimidated with you if you have bigger muscles,
Yeah.
Just because what I know.
And that's actually kind of cool, too, to think about, just because, like, this is one thing I like about people that do fighting sports, is there's like a certain, especially the better they are at the fighting sport, there's a certain level of, like, humbleness that those people carry. Like you, for example, like this whole time you haven't been it took a lot for me to even get out of you the fact that you could defend people. You know what I mean? Like you're always like gassing me up, like as if like I'm intimidating to you. But the reality is you could beat me up. Like that's the thing. Like, and I'm not gonna lie. Like this is a natural thing for men and probably some women too. There's like a machismo thing.
Oh yeah, no. And even what I know and do, like, I'm like, damn, I want muscles as big as him, Like, because everybody wants to be like somebody else, and that's just the harsh reality of it.
Right,
you know what I mean? Like, you always have your idols. You have an idol. Like, if you're a bodybuilder, Arnold Schwarzenegger or C-Bub, right? If you're a wrestler, you want to be like one of the Olympic champs. You want to be like Jordan Burroughs, David Taylor, or whatever. If you're a boxer, you want to be the best. You want to be like Canelo, Triple C, Johnny Tapia. If you're from New Mexico, you want to be like them. So like you want to build yourself around them. You want to look like them. You want to be like them. So it's just a mental thing. Everything is just a mental thing, And then now I'm at that stage of life. It's like, well, I'm past my competing days. Yeah, I still compete in jiu-jitsu and all that, but mentally, I know I'm not going to be a world champ. It can happen, It really can. Something could flip in my head where I could be a world champion jiu-jitsu at a certain bout level, and just compete. You could be a world champion powerlifter. You just keep training and all that, but the fact of reality is I know I'm not going to be one, and I'm not doing it to be world champion. Back when I was in high school, my only goal was to be a state champion. That was my only goal in this life. I just wanted to be a state champion and have that and be forever immortalized. And that's in Belen, because everybody wants to be the best. Everybody wants to, boast when they're 40 with kids. Yeah, I was a state champion. Yeah, I did this. Yeah, I did that, Everybody wants to. Everybody wants to be better than the next person, But it's also a mentality thing. I'm in that stage of thinking where it's like, that's cool, dude. But what else have you done? What have you done to, like, help your family, help your friends?
Okay.
Like, you don't need to boast about it, you know what I mean?
Was there a transition period for you when it came to that? Because, like...
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't know if, like, I met a couple people like this that were, like, very, very good at sports in high school. They didn't end up going to do college sports. Maybe it was, sometimes they even could have, you know what I mean? And then, but they just, like, didn't choose to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just what was going on in their life. And then all of a sudden there's this period of time, like, it was kind of like that for me a little bit. Like, after high school, there was this, like, period of time where, like, now I don't have the sports. Like, what do I got
lost
now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
and it's super, super common. You'll see a lot of D1 athletes, high school athletes, very, very good athletes, after they finish the sport and, say they're not good enough to keep competing for the rest of their life. You know what I mean? Some D1 athletes, they're not going to be world champions. They're not good enough to compete on the world level. And they feel lost because that's literally their whole life.
Did you feel lost for a second there?
Oh, yeah, no. That's why I started coaching. I felt lost. I was like, what am I going to do, Like, I had my career plan, Like, I'm a welder now. I have my career plan, I know this is going to be my career for the rest of my life. I know what I'm going to train in. I know what I want to do with my life. But you still feel lost because you've lost the routine. You lost what you wanted to do. You lost your dream if you didn't achieve your dream. Like, some people become state champions or they become what they want to do in the sport and, they're satisfied. And they're like, all right, I'm quitting. And they're perfectly fine with that. And they could go on with their life and be okay. And, I'm not speaking for everyone. I wasn't like that. I lost my dream. you know, it sucks. It really did, you know, like I was in a dark place for a while, you know, not suicidal or anything, you know, but you get mentally down on yourself. You're like,
Totally.
what could have been? What could have been? And you think about that, you know?
Did you ever regret like not doing it in college or anything like that?
No, I don't regret. You know, I had a couple college offers. You know, not D1, of course, but you know, I had a couple college offers. You know, a couple schools calling, but you know, at that point, when I lost the state championship, I lost the love for competing. You know, so it was a hard transition because you know I still had the track season going on. I still had everything else. It was just like, you know, the one thing I wanted to do in my young life. You know, because I'm only 21 still, and that happened 3 years ago. The only thing I ever wanted to do was just be a state champion, either in track or in wrestling. And I didn't achieve either. And, you know, and that's okay. Not everybody's destined to be like that. Not everybody's destined to be the best in that particular thing. But what you can do, like, and I keep coming back to this, is just be the best that you can. Right? Because not everybody's gifted like that. You know, I'm not going to be gifted enough to lift your numbers. Maybe one day, years down the line, I could be that strong, but that's not my goal. You know what I mean? Some people may look up to you and be like, I want to be like Adam. Or some people may look up to me and be like, I want to be like Gabe one day. You know? And that's okay to be a role model. You know? Be the role model and show them that there's more than life than, you know, the sport. Because there's so much life, you know?
You know, that brings up this, like, concept and... So do you happen to know what Jordan Peterson is?
The name sounds super familiar.
Okay, he's like, he's an author and used to be like a professor, and I look up to the guy. He's a cool guy to me.
Okay.
He's like, I'm a kind of a little bit of a Jordan Peterson fanatic.
He's like, I have his books all on my shelf.
I have a lot of his books. Yeah, I've read a lot of his books. I listen to a lot of him. One thing that he kind of talks about that is that like there's like. In sports, there's the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's like the individual basketball game, for example.
Yeah.
Let's go with basketball. And then there's like levels to how you can construe the different games that are involved within the game, right? Like part of the game for you could be like scoring as many points as you can or whatever. Part of the game could be just winning the actual basketball game.
Of course.
And then there's like the bigger, more elaborate games of like life, you know what I mean? The kind of thing where like we're like, you know, being a good sport, being a good person, like you're just talking about there.
Good friend, good neighbor, good husband, you know, good brother. Right.
And like in some coaches, I kind of like to hear this when I hear this from like high school coaches and things like that. They'll be like, they'll say things like, I'm just trying to get these kids to be the best men that they can possibly be later, kind of thing.
Of course.
I watched a show called Ted Lasso that my friend put me on. It was a really good show. And the whole concept there is that he was like a high school football coach or something. And then he ends up coaching this like a soccer team in the UK. And he has no idea about anything about soccer. What up, Jade? Oh, no, you're totally good.
We'll edit this part out. It's going to be like, fine, edit this part out.
Did I come during the gay part? Is that what this is?
Yeah, it was getting really gay.
We're about to take off our shirts right now.
I was literally just going to say, I knew it was human in here. I knew it was humid.
I was getting a little sweaty.
Just wash your hands.
We did
wash our hands.
Stay warm.
See, I was saying like Ted Lasso. It's a great show. Whole point is like there's this like high school football coach that ends up going to coach soccer in the UK like at a really high level, and he has no idea what he's doing about soccer. But he ends up kind of making it work out because like he has like this whole philosophy where it's like it's like there's like cheesy parts to it.
Yeah, of course.
But like it's like a really great show. Like the whole thing is like he doesn't really care about winning or losing. It's all about just making the team better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you like? I guess like do you feel that way about wrestling?
I'll tell you why I got into coaching. You know, I had a lot of friends in high school. You know, I wasn't popular, but I just knew a lot of people. You know, like everybody knew me because my nickname's Ling Ling. I didn't know people. But the ones I was close with, you know, of course I knew. So I had a lot of friends that I wrestled with or played sports or just went to school with that just fell off. They dropped out, got into drugs. They didn't have a good support system back at home. Parents may have been on drugs. Maybe they were divorced. Maybe they were fighting a lot and they just felt unseen. They felt like they couldn't speak, that they were drowning in all this, emotional thing. And we're kids, they were kids. And, you're in your developmental stages where you need some kind of support. You know what I mean? And they weren't either getting it from their parents or teachers or whatever. So the whole reason why I got into coaching is if I could, be that support system, like you could be the best in wrestling and I'll coach you to be the best in wrestling. And of course, I'm going to praise it. Like, yeah, I train the best. He is the best, and of course, every coach wants to do that, They want to say I train the best, or I'm the best coach. Everybody wants to be it, But my main goal is, if I could be that, father figure, that older brother figure, somebody that they could rely on so they could, keep going without falling off, because you'll see it a lot. As a coach, I didn't realize how much my coaches see this, like kids are struggling in grades, they could be straight A's one week. And then next thing you know, they just start slowly falling. And, teachers will just think they're lazy sometimes, some teachers will. Because they're just there for a paycheck. Some teachers will actually take the time to communicate with their, kids. But sometimes that's just not what happens, So if I could be that figure, to keep them motivated, keep them off the sheets, keep them doing something besides, being rebellious, just breaking the law, breaking in, doing dumb stuff that kids do. If I could be that figure to help them push through these hard years, then so be it, If you're a great wrestler, that's cool. That's great. That's what I want you to be. But if I could be there supporting you, making sure you keep your grades up so you can either go to trade school, college, or do what you want to actually do in this life, that's my whole objective. And I know I'm young. I'm 21. I'm still a kid myself. I just barely turned legal, but just seeing this from these 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 13-year-olds just struggling so hard mentally because, like I said, their parents may not be together. They may be on drugs. They may have a super hard home life. They're being abused. There's so many different situations that just can happen. And sometimes they have the best support system at home, but, they just need somebody else to tell them, you're doing good. You're great, because I have the best support system at home, hands down. I'm going to boast about my parents, but like they were always there every single damn tournament. It doesn't matter, 400 miles away, 2 miles away, they were there supporting me. My mom taking pictures of me because she's a professional photographer, always just being there. My dad always yelling, like I'll tell you about my dad. He works graveyard, so he would literally go to work the night before, work all day, and then watch me wrestle the whole day or watch me run track without sleeping and then drive home and then go back to work. So this man will literally be up for like 48 hours straight just to be here for me and my brother.
Wow.
So that's what my dad would do. He would try to catch, a few, hours of sleep on the way home or whatever, but he would literally go back to work and just go through it. And, I am internally grateful for my parents, for being such great people, raising me to be the man that I am today, But, some parents aren't like that, and that's okay. No parent, we shouldn't be comparing parents here, our parents love us some way. And, that's just how my parents wanted to show their love and support, But some kids don't even have a warm dinner at home when they get home or even a sandwich to eat.
Dude, that's so that's so cool that you recognize like that. Like, it actually like almost kind of like makes me a little emotional thinking about it, just because yeah, I mean, like the fact that you have a good family life kind of thing, and then recognize that they're like your peers in high school or whatever, like you probably would be able to recognize okay, that kid right there, the struggle that kid went through is that's tough, you know what I mean?
And I can never relate to the struggles. I can't. But I can help you as much as you let me help you,
right? And provide that positive role model kind of thing.
Of course. And that's the whole reason why I do it, There's no money to be made here. There's no nothing. It sacrifices a lot of my time, sleep, and energy and everything, But I don't care, If I could make this town a better place than it was yesterday, that's my whole goal. And that relates to my whole philosophy. If I could be a better person than I was yesterday, then so be it. And we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect in this world.
Right.
We all have our emotions. We all get mad. We all yell. We all cry. We all, nobody's perfect. And not everybody's going to like you. And that's just how life is, You could be the best person in the world, and I can still not like you. You know what I mean? I could do great things, donate to charity, do this, do that, be an outstanding citizen, and there's still a reason why somebody not likes you. You know, and we're all human beings. We all have emotions, and we all need to regulate them. You know, and sometimes our emotions make us look worse than we actually are. You know, so that's why I never judge a kid if they have a burst out. You know, if they start crying, they get mad, or they start pushing away. You know, because they're in that age where they don't know how to control those emotions. They don't know how to deal with them. You know, and especially if they're going through such a hard home life or just a hard time. You know, say when their parents die, their grandma dies. You know. And, they're getting that support from their parents or whatever, but sometimes kids don't recognize that's all they need, and sometimes they just need somebody else, and if I could be that